This video extends the lesson, Day 11, Berlin, Stop Processing Personal Data, and contains an in-depth comment of the Guidelines on Consent and Recitals, 42, and 43, of the GDPR. Please, find in the description below references for the course. A direct consequence of giving a person full control over her/his consent is the possibility to withdraw it at any moment. The underlying principle is that it should be as easy to revoke a person's consent than it was to give it in the first place. It does not mean that both actions must be performed in the same way. Guidelines on consent. The method should nevertheless be equally easy to use and accessible via the same interface, whether through an app, a website, or email. A merchant cannot collect consent through an online form, such as asking users to call a phone number during business hours to withdraw it. Furthermore, there should be no fees attached to the demand to withdraw consent, and a person should be able to refuse or withdraw consent without bearing any negative consequences. Recital 42. Consent to collect data shouldn't be a condition on executing or continuing to perform a contract unless collected data are necessary to do so. Recital 43. According to the European Guidelines on Consent, these principles are part of valid consent, and should be fully respected. The lack of respect or providing easy means to withdraw consent or sufficient information on how to do it directly affects the validity of the consent itself. Recitals 42 and 43. The withdrawal of a person's consent does not affect the lawfulness of processes based on her/his consent. They remain valid provided, of course, that they had been carried out following the conditions stipulated by the legislation. The controller should stop processing any data after a person has withdrawn her/his consent. Another consequence of withdrawal is the obligation to delete all data. Guidelines on consent, linked to that specific consent, a responsibility arising from the provision relating to the right to erasure, Article 17, 1, v.